on. And so it's been really cool to see some of those brand building fundamentals almost 10x in value overnight. And so that's a lot of what I talk about and I coach people on now, because I think if you can bring those traditional brand building fundamentals into B2B and actually activate it using these new AI systems, it becomes a competitive force multiplier.
GTM AI podcast with Jonathan Moss and Coach K, where you get the latest with AI and GTM today. GTM AI podcast with Jonathan Moss and
Good
Coach
afternoon,
K.
good evening, everyone. It is I, Jonathan Carford. Some people call me Coach K, and I'm very excited, pleased, privileged, humbled, and honored to have my wonderful dear friend who I've gotten to know this last year, Mrs. Maddie Bell, who is the co-founder and CEO of Synapsa, which I used at Momentum. So I'm really excited to have you because we get a deep dive into all the things AI. And I just want to tell you, thanks for coming because you're just one of my favorite people in the space. So thank you for being here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Obviously, being on Coach K's podcast, it's big
What
time.
else do you need?
It's big time. I'm ready, guys. I want to hear all the feedback. This is the moment where,
This is the moment. This is the thing. We connected in Pavilion, actually. It was like a year or so ago. And then you told me about your tech, which was originally called Scheduler. And then you changed the name to Synapsa. And anyway, so we got it and used it, and the team loved it. It had really a lot of good success. And you and your hubby was in the background doing some really cool stuff for us. You guys have been nothing but so good to work with. Both the tech is great, and then you two are individually great, and the team. And anyways, I'm just glad to know you and connect. You're someone I'm very grateful for, and your husband too. He's such a stud. So appreciate it.
Thank you. You're getting the one half, and maybe, who knows, maybe on a future podcast, you'll get the other half. And then
I need to
compare the two, because we always get questions, right? They're like, so how
I know, right?
the running a venture-backed AI startup with your spouse going? Oh, yeah.
We should do a husband and wife AI comment. That'd be fun. You have an interesting background because even though you're deep in AI and you're CEO of Synapsa, you came from Procter Gamble as a brand director. So I love your thought process because it's funny when you listen to people's in this current AI world and you hear about people's histories, so much of what you've learned through a totally different spectrum leans itself into what you're doing now with AI, which is just crazy. So I'm not going to do a good job of doing your background. So tell me about you, who's Maddie, and where'd you come from, and how did you get to this crazy world of AI stuff?
Yeah, no, happy to. So yes, so my name is Maddie Bell. And indeed, if you didn't catch John saying it, I am married to my co-founder who I met at 15 years old. So we are co-founders in business and in life. We have 3 children, 8, 6, and 4, all girls who are just the blessing of life, I think. But we run a tech company. And prior to this, I was running billion-dollar brands for one of the world's largest companies. And so if I ever write a book, I think it will be called From Soap to SaaS, because that has been indeed a journey.
It's a journey.
First few years that we did this, when we had our big idea and what we thought, every early founder has that, this is how I think the world should work, and this is how I'm going to change the world moment. And for us, and gosh, it's crazy to play it back because this was almost 5 years ago. Mike ended up leaving his corporate job. He was the vice president of data engineering and machine learning at Nielsen. So he knew a few things. Working on AI before it was cool. Yeah. So we did this a while back, but even at that time, and it's funny, right? We'd always talk about what is a big idea. And it really is something that lives below the surface, that when someone says it to you, it's obvious, but it's not quite up there yet. And for us, the big idea was really this idea that meetings are the atomic unit of business growth. They are literally the blueprint of who, why, how, where work gets done between people. And what we saw was that the context, the conversations around the meetings literally shape business movement, but they were disconnected, right? We'd have all these conversations and then we'd be like, great, fill out this link and put it on my calendar. And that whole data set was essentially broken. And so the hypothesis was we could create better human-to-human business connection by linking the context of the conversation to the meeting. And at the time, the way that came to life back in its earliest days was just the act of scheduling 3 people in this organization, 2 people in that organization, or a buying committee, right? Trying to move people through a pipeline. And it was just the scheduling and booking and routing. But then obviously in the way that big ideas work, they grow, and the problems to that atomic moment grew with it, right? Now we need to know who needs to be in the meeting. Are they qualified? And did we talk to them soon enough to even make them want to meet? And then when we did meet, did we record it? And if we recorded it, did we push it back into the systems to create more intelligence? And so our company...
all the stuff.
Yeah, all the stuff. And so our company just continued to grow and evolve almost organically as we followed the path of the problem. And so that was why we ultimately made our shift about 18 months ago under the new branding Synapsa, because what we had done is we really formulated our thesis, which is this idea that good AI for go-to-market should be three things. It should be instant, it should be intelligent, and it should be damn near invisible to buyers, right?
Look at you. I love these threes. You can tell you've been a brand director. I love it.
Yeah, right? All my brand directors, you can
all
hear
your things, yeah.
you got to have that identity and that mission. And so in that same kind of arc of us growing as a company and growing into the problem that we solved, when I first came into it, I thought, gosh, what are all those things that you learn about brand building, particularly B2C brand building, which is where I came from? How could that relate to B2B SaaS, right? I'm a fish out of water. And so we consumed all of the great knowledge from all of the books, literally all the books. We read all the books. Our number one superpower is we are hyper nerds. But what was really interesting about that journey was the things that you learn about the way humans operate and the way we communicate and the way that we feel things through communication. All of a sudden, that traditional background in brand building has actually escalated, and we started to see patterns, and we started to say, wait a minute, yes, our buyers are in a buying committee doing mid-size enterprise type activities, but they're also still human. And so they also still follow some of these patterns and these thought processes. And so we've actually seen, and I'm actually even more grateful for that background that I thought, oh, how will this be valuable? Has now become hyper valuable. And I think even more so in a world of AI go-to-market brand building, because we are now able to address and engage buyers across a buying committee, across a spectrum at the end of one level. And to do that, we need to have the right strategic principles and processes in place to be able to operate at scale, but at end to one. And so it's been really cool to see some of those brand building fundamentals almost 10x in value overnight. And so that's a lot of what I talk about and I coach people on now, because I think if you can bring those traditional brand building fundamentals into B2B and actually activate it using these new AI systems, it becomes a competitive force multiplier. And it also breaks the issue, the problem, which we're seeing right now in this space, which is in our excitement to scale AI, many companies have overlaid it onto traditional Frankenstack systems. And rather than creating more intelligence, we've created more noise. And so I think the return to core brand building with AI is a way to combat bad buyer communication in the market. And we're starting to see that shift. So it's exciting.
That's really cool. I love having the background on this because I genuinely believe that I wrote an article about this like a year and a half ago, but I just tell people like one of your moats is going to be your humans, the intelligence, the experience, the professionals, because even though AI has the capability of replacing pretty much almost everything that a human can do as far as tasks are concerned, it cannot replace like your experience and your mistakes you made in the past and your successes and all that stuff that come with you and just your own soul and your intuition. It can't replace that. With that package of Maddie cannot be replaced. But when you inject that into AI, whether it's prompting or through automation, through whatever, like that's where the sweet spot comes in, because I can't replace you. Even though if we had the same path, same thing we did, everything was the same, it would still be different because we're different people, you know what I mean? Which is crazy. So,
and we've gotten to learn a lot about, it's been so fascinating, right? Because people that just use LLMs or other products, they don't get to see, right, what's happening behind the scenes. It's been so cool to be an AI builder because we can actually see how humans are interfacing and interacting with this technology. And it's so funny because I would say it's about 12 months ago, we stopped worrying about inaccuracies in the AI, right? And I know people are still, that's hot on their mind. You know, they're like, what about hallucinations? What about this? And the truth is, with the appropriate harnessing and QA loops and stuff like that, most of us building on the edge have figured out a way to really rein that in. And that's not actually the core conversion issue with the technology.
Right.
Interestingly, there's actually a bit of a pyramid that we found, right? If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we call it our pyramid of AI effectiveness. And really, the bottom is protocol, right? Can you follow the playbook and do what I ask, right? If we don't have protocol, we can't operate. And so you see a lot of, I built a business over the weekend in my closet. Cool. But you work by yourself. You're the sole decision maker. We haven't spent years and years dialing in this protocol and this process. So that's a great end of one example, but it's not fit for the mid-market and the enterprise. It's just not a reality that we have.
Yeah, it's not there.
And so can the AI come into an organization, follow protocol, and deliver the playbook appropriately? That is the foundation. But what's interesting is after that, you keep moving up. And the second one we found was personality. And what's really interesting here is a lot of people, when I say personality, they're like intellectual, happy, charismatic, right? And what we're saying without saying, though, and this is the thing that we learned through data, was more than anything else in the world, what people react negatively to is something with no personality. Psychologically, we'd rather you have a personality we don't like than no personality at all.
Nothing.
Exactly. And then similarly, if you ask people what's the number one best personality you can give an AI, they'll answer the question. This is a bar trick, by the way. You ask this and then you sound really smart. Okay. And then at the end, when they've all guessed, they're like intelligent, professional, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You say, would you consider yourself intelligent, professional, funny? The number one most preferred personality is one that mirrors that of the buyer, because that's where they're comfortable. And so there's a layer here where we can work on that personality. And then the last layer that we found that's even harder, and this is where we spend, I would say, the majority of our time, is persuasion. So you have protocol, you have personality, and you have persuasion. And persuasion is the art of strategically moving a buyer's focus from a state of need to an accurate problem understanding to a decision that moves that buying decision forward. And persuasion is completely different across the funnel, right? If you're just reading a blog article, what persuasion looks is nurture, enablement, curiosity, versus if you are at a moment where you're like, it's this guy versus you. Persuasion looks like compelling presentation of a value prop and proof points and testimonials. And so when you start to break those pieces down, when we talk about the effectiveness of your AI, it almost becomes laughable to say, I just downloaded a repo and set an AI on it over the weekend, and now I have $1 billion business. And so, wait a minute, all of these pieces matter. They matter to the buyer, and they matter versus your competition. And if you're not in there orchestrating them, who is? And that's what's really cool is we're seeing people see beyond the noise and say, I, as the human, am going to start to craft that strategic buyer journey. And the AI enables it in ways that I think are mind-blowing. And that's what's hard for people, right? They're stuck in this binary, which is AI is incredible versus it doesn't work, right? And the truth is the answer is in the middle, where you have highly trained operators codifying what they know works and then unleashing it at scale. That is real. It is happening, but it lives in a messy middle that's a little hard for people to understand right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting place because I think people get the impression that, I'm going to say this and I got to move on to what we're going to be talking about, but I think people get the impression that they think it's an easy download a repo, get a skill, something, plug it in, and I'm good to go. Like, it's not that way. It's not a plug and play, forget it. Because that's what leaders go through. They say, hey, what technology should I buy? And then my pipeline problems are solved. I'm like, that's not exactly how it works. It's just fascinating to see how people think it's easier than what it is.
It's funny because when you talk to folks, I don't think there's malicious intent in any of this.
Oh, of course. Of course.
I think the underlying challenge is that when we talk about brand building, go to market, sales, for many years, we've all been rewarded on volumetric activity, meaning the email exists, the post was published. And the truth is, anyone right now, anyone watching this, anyone listening to this can go to any LLM and say, post 100 things on LinkedIn right now. And it can.
Right.
It can post 1,000 things on LinkedIn right now.
Right.
But what you're saying, the quality of the content, the intentionality behind the communication is not as easily replicated. And I think that's where people are getting stuck. Yes, the AI can do all of the activity, all of the volumetric bips, bopping the boops, but it still requires intentionality around the craft of what we are saying and how we are saying it and when we are saying it. And so I think the good news, like what's the good news, is that the hope is that's the journey that companies are going on, from a world of I'm just getting my people to automate at volume to I'm getting them to craft buyer journeys at volume. So that's the hopeful future that I see for companies.
I love it. Let's dig in. So if someone's listening into this and they're thinking to themselves, what's in this for me? What's the things you want to give to the people listening for this next 20 minutes?
So I think that it's easy to talk about the art of brand building and making AI systems that work for you and humans that know how to use AI. And a lot of those, I'm going to call them platitudes, right? The rally cries, the ones that your CEOs have heard, and now you're going to be an AI first company and everybody's nodding and we put it on our work plans, but secretly we have absolutely no idea what anybody's talking about. You're like, AI first. Someone posted something in Slack last week. I built some. So for me, I like to break down some of those tensions of, okay, what the heck are we talking about? And the other thing that I like to break down for people is where we want different folks within the organization operating with AI. Because the truth is 99% of people that are faced with, how do I become an AI first organization? Their number one job is not building AI. Their number one job is serving a buyer who may not give one iota about AI. So we're getting all this pressure, right? To be AI first, to do this, to do that. But really, we also cannot be distracted, right? We do not want 100% of everybody inside your company being a builder. That's actually not the outcome that's going to serve the company. And so who needs to do what? So the two things that I like to land with folks when I do my trainings, my coaching, I work with companies, is where do we find the force multiplication? Who is the operator that should set the strategic direction? And setting strategic direction is no longer like, I just say cool strategic stuff. It's who is actually architecting what has to be true. And then how does the team engage with that in a way that's productive, and then they can go do what they are supposed to do. And so I find that the best way for me to do that, and the way that I prepared for today, was to do it through my lens. So I lead go-to-market for my company. And one of the things that I always recommend folks do, especially when you're talking about AI, is I don't think that in 10 years, 20 years, our kids are going to be like, you went to class for AI? It's like saying, I went to class for computer, right? Like, you know what I mean? We're all going to have functional lenses in which we view this, not only functional, but actually level, right? So I have 12 years of P&L operating experience. That's the level in which I'm going to view this technology. So typically when I train, I focus on folks at that level because their needs, what they're trying to do inside of an organization is very different than maybe someone who's just joined the organization, or maybe someone who's passed and really more closer to their exit of their career. So those are the things I can show for you, John. And I think I'm happy to show you what we've built in terms of, so we have built a headless frictionless AI go-to-market system for Synapsa. It includes obviously elements of our core product, but it also includes the other elements that we started to orchestrate around it. And I'm happy to walk you through what that looks like and how it works.
Let's do it. Let's dig in. Let's get to it. I know when we talked before, you showed me your Claude Code, so I know you use tons of tools, but let's tell me where you want to start. Let's get into it. You can share
Yeah,
the screen.
so I'm going to start with some visuals just to kind of ground us in the topic and the problem that we're solving. And then I will literally dig into the repo, show you guys the stuff, and kind of play the keys, if you will. Okay, so let's share this.
All
All right.
Give me some music. I love it.
Yeah, I know, right? So I think the one piece that we want to break in the go-to-market with AI space and kind of the journey that we went on was...
Sorry, I have to laugh at the blog with hundreds of indexes.
Yeah. So this was the reality, right? Like when I said, hey, we're using AI to run our go-to-market and marketing, most of the time sellers would get excited and buyers would eye roll, right? Buyers are like, please don't, please, for the love of God, don't. Because this is what your buyers see and hear in their mind. When you say AI for go-to-market or AI for marketing, they think hundreds of spammy emails, annoying chatbots that just want their email as well, and then blogs with M dashes for days. And I think it's because, right, we overlaid AI onto these old platforms. And the truth is that buyers are genuinely pushing back on this. So if you're thinking it and not saying it, it is true. In fact, 1 of 5 buyers is actually less confident in their buying decision nowadays. They're getting confused. We are confusing the crap out of them. And they're pissed. 7 out of 10 are like, if you spam me, I never want to talk to you again. So we're not getting the outcome. And so this was where we were like, hey, if we're going to run AI for go-to-market, how do we do that differently? Right. And so the way that we started thinking about it was looking at the cycle that we were stuck in from go-to-market. And believe it or not, a lot of companies, their number one challenge is not, I don't know what to say to my buyers. Their number one challenge is we don't say it often enough. We don't say it clearly enough. We don't communicate well. And so what we found was, right, knowledge is living in 58 million different places, right? If you are being honest, you probably have at least 10 Google Docs that just don't even have a title. There's, you needed to put the notes somewhere and you never came back to it and it still doesn't have a title. We're producing content in functional silos, right? Marketing's over here, sales is over here. Sometimes we have agencies over here. We don't have the connectedness of when buyers engage with our content and start to come into our sales cycle, our pipeline. That's completely disconnected from, okay, they finally filled out the booking link. Then everything on the other side tends to be very disconnected. And then as we're orchestrating this as a group, right? Approvals, handoffs, processes. It is literally email you, put it back into AI to fix it, email you, get it approved, right? We're still doing this. And so, and we felt that, right? We felt that. We were like, man, our volumetric velocity on good content is bad. So how can we break through that? And that's when we started building an agentic system. So when we talk to folks, we're like, what is an agentic system? It typically includes a team of agents. So that means we're not just using a single agent to do one thing, but we're organizing it. It is a knowledge base. So I'll show you that. It is specialized capabilities. And typically it includes a very powerful human operator.
Right.
So that is what we set out to build. And I can show you how we structured it in a way that amplifies the brand building side. So what I'll do is I'll give it to you in the pretty picture, and then we'll move into Claude Code.
Okay, I like it.
So the first thing we have here is everybody's heard of a knowledge repo, right, in Claude Code. And typically that was made for code, right? It's canonically referenced documents that kind of weave their way through and give information. We can do the same thing with go-to-market strategic documentation, right? We can reference it in a specific way and have the AI understand who our ICP is, what our positioning is, and that's super, super powerful. What we learned was because the AI has to go through that information, there's different types of load-bearing content within these repos. So the way to say that for people to get it is if The AI wakes up every morning. That first document that it reads, right, has disproportionate power within that
Right.
repo versus
Right.
the 150th document that it reads.
Mhm.
And so a lot of people are focused on, oh, we'll just map everything. But the reality is, as brand builders, we don't want to map everything. We want to be intentional with what is load bearing, what documents, what opinion pieces have actually shape who we are as a business. And
Hierarchy matters.
yeah,
Yeah.
and what is there. And so for us, we actually went back to a traditional brand building equity pyramid. That's what this is
Mhm.
called. It's an old fundamental method, but it is designed to shape what a business stands for in the hearts and minds of consumers by accurately articulating who that brand is, what it stands for, how they're different, how they're the same versus the category norm, and how they own that through ownable assets, ownable proof points, ownable visual identity.
Whatever.
And so
Yeah.
we actually codified that into our knowledge base. So I'm going to go into the Cody version of it. So this is the scary one. But you can see in our marketing file, we actually have these core brand building sets of knowledge that have
But
been
for those people who are new, can you explain real quick, like when they see these extensions? I know what a YAML file is in MD, but tell me really quick, how do you think about the file types and what are they and that kind of stuff? Is that okay?
for sure. So
Yeah.
to ground people in what's in front of you, first you have a marketing AI repo. That is a
Mhm.
fancy as heck way of saying a folder. And so I like to
Right.
always show people, I'm like, guys, it's a folder. You've seen these before, right? It's right here. It looks like a folder. This is in the pretty white version, so you don't get scared, right? That's all it is. That's all it is. It's a folder. But we call it a
Right.
repo because it makes us sound cool in front of our friends. Um,
Because we sound like we're up to date with the AI peeps.
yeah, I have
I got
a
a
repo.
repo.
You too can have a repo if you just make a folder. And then within that repo, right, you do have coded guidance. I'm just going to call them coded guidance documents because, again, I don't want to go too deep into it. Some of which are bearing for the agent. So, like a .claude file. This literally is telling my agent who it is, what it's doing, what skills it has. And then
Mhm.
some of it are just information, right? So you can see knowledge base lives
Right.
outside of that.
Content.
And then some of them are for the output of information. So where the content comes once the AI has woken up, it's read its skills, it's read its knowledge, it's created its content. And so all of that lives in the repo. And there's a lot of work on how to organize this from a, call it technical way, right? Because you see there's brand YAMLs, there's JSONs, there's stuff like that. And for the builders of this repo, that's very important information. For the users of this repo, you want to ignore that completely. And so a lot of companies, mine included, have actually simplified the repo for our marketing teams to something that looks like this. And so here you can see that when they come into this environment, it's already pointed to that repo. They don't need to go find it. It's already connected to the folder. And when they're looking through content, you can actually organize your content by type, by campaign. And so that's really making it easy for them to just focus on what they want to focus on, because I don't want them focused on, I'm going to go build a skill. That's for the operator. That's for the architect. And I can walk you through who I think owns that. But for me, typically you want your commercial leaders building the skills and the protocols for your agents. And you want to enable the rest of your team to just use the agents. Right. And so you can see here, the way we've crafted it is we have the AI, we can point it to files that are well organized for marketers. And sometimes we don't actually want to have AI. Sometimes it's not actually helpful for AI to edit, right, with a prompt. Sometimes you just want to drop a comment. Sometimes you just want to highlight something and say, fix just this. And so we've built in some of that UI UX to help our team not even worry about, are we doing this with AI or not? It's, are we doing this most efficient and effective way possible to get it to buyers? That should be in the back of our mind at all times. Because again, not everybody has to be a builder. So that's the evolution of the knowledge base, where you start here, where someone, ideally the operator, the business leader, that's probably, depending on the size of your company, whoever owns go-to-market communication, is coming in here and is working with the team to get really clear on competitive positioning, to get really clear on customer value prop, to get really clear on product features, the ones and how we're going to articulate them, on customer proof, right? What are the case studies that we want the AI really aware of at all times? And I would say for those setting up these repos for the first time, this is at least a week of work. This is, because here's what happens. These things will travel, right? They'll get amplified. This is the mustard seed for your entire brand communication. So we really want to spend time here. The other thing that happens here, and it's interesting, and it happens to a lot of teams, is at first, it's mesmerizing and super easy because you put in 6 documents. God, the AI knows us. When you get to 60 documents, when you get to 600 documents, you'll find degradation. And that's happening because you have not created the right scaffolding for the AI to appropriately read documents in the appropriate order. And that is called progressive disclosure. And that is where what ends up happening is in a lot of these skills and MD and Claude files, what ends up happening is these skills reference each other and specific documents. And so when you go into the ad create skill or the code review skill or the competitor research skill, they are now canonically linked to parts of this repo, to knowledge in this repo. And what's really interesting about that is the skills start to look a little bit like Spanglish, a little bit code, right? Because you have the
Spanglish is so funny.
Yeah, you have the words, but then it says reference file A, B, C over here, right? So we could probably find something here. So for verifying existing data, use / competitive UA, QA. So that's another detecting drift. For detecting drift, use the freshness scan. And so you start to see these are prompted skill files. Like I just typed and Claude helped me. But the references start to create this interesting world of kind of brand building Spanglish that is hard to do well. Now, here's the question that's probably in most people's head at this point. They're like, cool, I am 100 overwhelmed. Right?
As most things in AI, most people are like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm just going to shut down.
Yeah, I believe you. This looks hard. And oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Honestly, that's why we started to break down for people. One, start with an empty folder, right? An empty folder that doesn't have anything in it and say, look, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build a marketing AI repo. I need a specific agent to start with one, and I need you to set up the file format for me. And it'll do it. It'll do it for you if you start asking those questions. And then you want to say, okay, I need knowledge base that can be progressively disclosed. What do you recommend? Or ask someone like me. I'll tell you the top 5 most important documents that I think, and they're in here and we ran through them quickly, and then get those. And then I think we have the walkthrough and I got to find that document again. Where'd it go? There we go. What we find is that there really is 5 steps to it after that. And I can walk you through, I think I can walk you through. Yeah, it's down here. Sorry, team. So the first thing we like to see people do is that knowledge base. The second thing is actually building a design system. And a lot of salespeople will see this and be like, why do we need a design system? That is what the marketers do. But the truth is, we do want our brand showing up consistently. And we want the AI to be able to represent us across all touch points. So you drop in a call transcript and you want to send a deck to the customer to summarize what you talked. You want that deck to look just like this one. Beautiful. This is 100% AI coded. The way we get there is someone did the work to set up a strong AI first design system, right? So then for us, just to summarize, and then you can poke at questions and we can answer things. The next steps for us were, okay, we have the knowledge to represent ourselves. We have the visual way to represent. You can see that's coded here. So you can see how deep we went into everything. Then we said, okay, what's the holding device for this information? What's that first thing we're going to build? And that was when we moved our entire brand site over to 100% AI code. So our Synapsa marketing facing site is 100% AI coded. we worked with our design system to start to build these components, because that's what come next is components. And what's interesting is once you've built these high value components showing how your product works, now I can use them in decks. I can use them in digital one-pagers. I can call upon this information to be used in other places. So once we codified our storytelling, we can start to scale it. So that's what happened next. So we codified the full site. We did all of our competitive analysis, battle cards. It all gets pushed back through into here fully automatically. And that brings me to that third step, which is we started to create the content engine. So once you have the core knowledge, you have the hub for where it all needs to interact, you can start to create the content production engine. And this is where if you do AEO, SEO, or you need competitive comparison, or you need to optimize funnels, you start to build the ability to automate that content production back in. And so the way that looks for us is we have skills for things like research on what blogs we need to talk about. The thumbnails were generated with AI. The text, the claims, the QA was all done and all generated by AI so that we just need to think of the next topic, right? And it's able to go end to end with our approval directly to the site across things like blogs, case study. Look at that handsome guy.
Hey, look at that. Who's that dude?
Look at that handsome guy throughout the ecosystem. And so you start to scale good content production. Now with all things, note, I did not say you download a set of skills and do it. For us, we actually have a library of approved content that when the AI writes net new content, it has to go in, pick 3 randomized samples from our library and score the new content on a rubric based on those 3 as the rubric to say, does this sound authentically Synapsa? And if not, it is rejected and it cannot be shown to the human. So you can get into that layer, right? Which is where we've gone. And then the last layer, believe it or not, was surprising to us, but is very real, which is all of a sudden you become the bottleneck. So when you have the power of, I've really spent time codifying my knowledge, how I look, I have a place to produce content to regularly, I've built in the right skills and tactics to make sure it's being produced at buyer level quality. How do I make sure that I'm not the bottleneck with my ideas and going to sleep at night and being a human? And so that's where we created the actual agent teams that are able to research, give us ideas, and push it back to us for approval to go execute. And that's the flip, right? Is when I wake up in the morning, the AI is proposing, hey, this is what I think we should go do next. And I, as the human, am still deciding, yes, I think that's a valid use of our time, or no, I don't. So that is the AI kind of marketing stack that we built. And then interestingly enough, on the sales side, we've complemented it. And so this is more the core Synapsa platform. Because all of our go-to-market communication is now codified in an AI system, our agents can now read and engage with customers across every single buying signal. So when someone's reading, we can de-anonymize, we can start a guided selling conversation, we can qualify them into the right sales motion, maybe they're SMB, maybe they're enterprise. We can route and book without friction, and we can log where that person came in through. So that when the seller, who was the proper round robin AE on mid-market, preps for the call, which by the way, the AI is sending them the prep, they can understand, okay, I know exactly where this buyer came from, what they were doing, what they were interested, what they said to start to craft that sale. And then what's really interesting is once that AE or rep is in the seat, one of the most important things AI can do is get the F out of the way. Right? And start to support that rep and help with the notes and help with the logging and help with the systems updating and actually create more knowledge for itself to go do the engagement on the front line.
It goes into self-improving open cloud concepts, right? So
exactly. And so that's how we run everything we run. And now it's really about depth, more channels, more ICPs, more strategic buyer conversations, better persuasion, better situational awareness. That is really where we are spending the majority of our time.
Tell me this. I know we have 7 minutes left, something like that. So I'm curious because you answered this to me before, but I'm sure you come up with this yourself that because of the ease of using Cloud Code or Perplexity or Cloud Code or Codex, whatever, people have the assumption that whatever is out there can be built via Cloud Code, as you've well shown. You've done a lot of things in Cloud Code, but there's this line that I think always changes based on how much AI progresses. But there's a difference between building something versus buying something. You know what I mean? So like, how do you, as a builder, and you also have a technology, I think your point of view on this is unique because you're both. How do you guide people through saying, okay, you can totally go try and build this, but what you'll be missing is this, whatever. What's the balance for you? And when do you actually go buy a technology versus building because you do this in the background? You know what I mean? How do you balance that?
It's funny because I think as a builder, the build versus buy question has to be in my mind all day long. Right? At the end of the day, the cool thing about my team is we could probably build anything. We could probably insert whatever technology you need. But really, I think the build versus buy decision comes down to you got to pick your hard. You got to pick where you're going to go and say, this is something that only applies to my company and needs to be owned versus I need to keep moving and keep talking to my buyers. So the way kind of my litmus test, and then there are some functional things I consider is number one, what is the buyer first answer, right? What is going to deliver the buyer the best experience? Is it going to be something my team just coded because they know the company like the back of their hand? Or is it going to be something that a company spends all day, every day obsessing over? And so I'll give you an example. There are scenarios where folks building better analytics, they have been assessing that buyer community for years, for decades. Wow. They know what they're looking for. Why would you bring in a secondhand analytics company that just got to know your customer yesterday? Right? I would build those analytics dashboards using the expertise of your operators. A scenario where you are trusting an AI to have a direct conversation with your buyer that needs to happen in a multiplayer, back and forth, live environment where any form of failure is going to mean losing an opportunity, I would be very careful with who you staff for that work. Not because the work isn't highly valuable, but because the amount of focus needed on creating a human experience in a world of high degree of accuracy needed, low latency, lots of fallbacks, lots of different connectors that have to go right? You kind of have to manage that. So I would say the first thing that I would think about is, where are my people uniquely gifted in being able to create a competitive advantage on what they build versus where do I want to just know that other people are sleeping and breathing this specific workflow all day long, right? And I can pick up the phone and be like, what the heck, guys? And really that as a business owner is, I think, always the case. I think for AI specifically, build versus buy, because that's also helpful. What we are seeing in this space is single player output is extremely solvable right now. Meaning if you as an operator or a person need a specific task done for you to be approved by you to be pushed back into the system, there is very rarely a time when you cannot quickly build that. So single player output with human approval, at the end of the day, I think the big guys are taking this world by storm and they're really good at it right now. Claude Cowork is good at it, right? We should not be creating decks from scratch. We should not be creating documents from scratch, right? That single player, single approval output, I think is now AI zoned and build yourself almost exclusively. I think the litmus test for buy is in the multiplayer orchestration zone, right? What happens when content needs to be handed off and approved? What happens with back and forth content with your buyer, right? When they start replying, the game gets real fast. Humans are weird. Do you have the right level of protections, security, handoffs, reporting, recording? Do you have the fallbacks, right? What if that LLM goes down? You're just not going to run your sales pipeline today? You cannot have a world where you have a single reliance on a single LLM in a buyer-facing real-time moment. You just can't if you want to maintain a system that does not get fired. And that's what you're battling, right? Is you're going to hire this system and you don't want to fire it. 40% of AI products are getting fired because they are not reliable, secure, multiplayer, bringing humans in
Well,
at the right time.
just like what happened with Vercel. Like Vercel had that major security issue like 5 days ago, like whatever it was. Crazy. So yeah, I'm with you.
So to me, there's still a very real buy world when you have multiplayer orchestration of a buyer-facing workflow at play. All of those things that I said, multiplayer, right? We have to have different humans in, different AI in. That's super complicated. When we say buyer-facing, right, that tends to be real time. We don't get 5-10 minutes to figure out the right answer. And then when we think about orchestration, right, where certain processes just quite frankly have to happen before others as part of the organizational workflow, it's really not something that the AI can just make up or just wing it, right? We have organizational processes that humans depend on that have to be delivered in a certain way. To me, if you check those boxes, if you're like, man, this is multiplayer, man, this is buyer facing real time, and man, this has to be orchestrated through a specific process, or I'm not sure that I'm going to be confident in the outcome, that is when I would start to look for a supplier. And then as I look for suppliers, I would be extremely bullish in what I ask them to show me. Because I think one of the challenges right now in the space is everyone can claim everything. The AI can do all the things, right? It can create 1,000 social posts. It can have 1,000 buyer conversations. Were they good? Did it work? What are the production thresholds and grades? And what are the integrations? You got to push hard because we are seeing a lot of businesses regretting not pushing harder up front.
Yeah, I love that. Maddie, this is fascinating. I love just seeing your brain work with the brand concepts. It's funny. I'm going to say one thing. When I teach prompting, again, this was like when I first started teaching prompting 4 years ago, I would tell people hierarchy matters around prompting. And it's funny to see some of these core principles still be consistent as you grow to a repo and grow fuller. And these more massive things, these basic concepts matter, which is fascinating. And I love seeing it from your point of view as a brand builder, because you had to do that in the brand building days in BLZ, you know? So anyway, I think it's amazing, and I just love watching you do your stuff. I love it. So you're okay if I share your LinkedIn, and you obviously have synapsa.ai as your website. Anywhere else I can make sure I send people to for you, where they can find you?
No, I think one of the things that we enjoy most is we are operators. We've been operators. We recognize that for mid-market and enterprise businesses, it is not as simple as just waking up in the morning and being an AI first company. And we recognize that they need to manage the opportunity of AI with the risk of AI. So the conversations we most like to have is with go-to-market leaders working to understand what is a scalable, secure, buyer-first AI go-to-market system. And we'll talk to you guys all day about it because it's our favorite topic.
I love you guys are nerds like me. It's one of my favorite things. Maddie, thank you so much. I just appreciate you taking the time and digging in. And I'll also be tagging you in the skills app. I just want to tell you thank you. Tell your hubby hi and miss talking to him. So yeah, appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to the GTM AI podcast. Please follow, subscribe, like, comment, and come back for more.